Hi everyone, so as I was introduced, I'm Shalini Ahuja, have been at Adobe. I started at Adobe in our headquarters in the San Jose office as a computer scientist. And so at that time, I had just completed my undergrad. Actually, it was my second job in the Valley. And when I first went into work, real life, I knew what I was supposed to do as a software engineer because I had learned how to read PRDs, I had learned how to write code, and I had learned how to test. So I was pretty confident. And that's me. I don't have the fancy glasses, but super confident I knew what I was doing. And then I stayed in engineering for about 10 or so years and then moved into product management. And that's me. So I thought I had thrown myself in a swimming pool and I didn't know what I was doing, although I had an MBA that was focused on business strategy. So I should have had my tools and frameworks, which I had, whatever I got from the books. But still, when working on product and as a PM in innovation, it was tons of uncertainty, nobody to go ask questions. I felt like as a PM, I was sort of alone in this huge team, as opposed to being an engineer when you're working with other engineers and you're part of the team, and you always have leads to go ask questions to. Here, I start working on the project, and I'll go through 3 different ones that I've worked in, and the specific problems that I ran into, and some that I was unable to unblock myself in, and the others that I didn't. So I will talk about my failures, if you will. But it's been a super interesting journey. So that's what I'll speak to. 3 projects. One that I call success, and I'll define what I mean by success. Second, that was put on hold. And third was to continue. This is because as a PM in innovation, the kind of projects that come my way are all new ideas that teams want to explore. And my job is to do whatever research that's required to help make decisions like, should we invest further in it? Or should we kill it? Or should we pivot or continue as is? So it's super exciting. Lots of uncertainty, lots of risk, lots of experimentation. So the first one, this was a project I got into a couple of years ago. It was to launch an innovation platform. And what I mean by that is teams at Adobe, they launch products, right? We know that. We've been in the performance. So if you're familiar with the zone to win, 4 zones, performance and innovation and whatnot, incubation zone, productivity zone. I have teams, we know how to do productivity zone and performance zone. We know how to make revenue. But in incubation zone, not a lot of practices are established. And so what we were trying to do, a few of us who were really passionate about new experiments, we wanted to launch a website where we can showcase all the new experiments that teams across the company are working on. And so we can learn a lot earlier about the product market fit, about technology, whether it's resonating with the users, about the new user interaction paradigms. So that's what we wanted to test. So it would require launching that website, having some experiments there to begin with, and then getting alignment across the company with all sorts of business units, and creating a playbook that we could just offer to the teams, and they could run with it. They would know how to launch an experiment on this. So first problem, actually before I get into the problem, we were pitching this to all sorts of executives, and the way it works in the company is you go and pitch to different relevant executives, and they act like VCs. So they decide whether they want to run with it, they want to fund more or not. And so our final pitch was to the CPO. And we said, we want to do this. And he said, oh, I'm so impressed. I want to launch this in 4.5 weeks. And that was our annual conference, which is huge. And I got back from that meeting thinking, yeah, we're going to launch it. I mean, there's no other, CPO has asked, we're going to launch it. But the other people were thinking, it seems like. The following week, I meet with my boss, and he says, so do you think we can launch it? I started launching it last week. I mean, I'm working on it, so there's no question. We are launching it. And I think what I didn't know was the big problem we are going to hit is getting the alignment across the company. So I thought I could move fast because I know how to create websites. There's engineer, there's designer I have, there's a program manager I have. Sure, we can do this. But getting approval from legal, privacy, security, brand, to only name a few, I hadn't dealt with them, and it was, every single conversation was huge because they are there, their job is to protect Adobe. Legal wants to make sure we are not going to be sued. Privacy wants to make sure we're going to be meeting all the GDPR requirements, we're using the right tools, we're not storing any user information, and what is it if you're storing, if it's safe and whatnot, all sorts of difficult conversations. So just the two of us, me and my program manager, we went on this roadshow and getting approvals from each of them. Every single day that passed, I was like, we still don't have everything we need to. We at least need the approval. Technical part, I'm not worried about because I know it's a website, it'll get launched. I know those guys, they're going to do it. And it was stressful. But I think at the end of it, we were able to do it. What really helped is having a clear vision. So really focused on having a clear vision. So we had vision listed very clearly in the pitch that we were making. Wherever we needed some more help, we brought in different executives to come help. Wherever we needed to use the, CPO has asked to do this sort of argument, we did it. So different tactics, I think. That was sort of new to me, working with all these organizations and really seeing which argument I can use to get their buy-in. That was one thing that helped. The second thing that I felt it was the passion. The small group that came together who really wanted to launch this platform was super passionate about it. That I hadn't seen the value of that, the value that passion brings, and when you have a few people who kind of combined with their forces and they want to do it, they make it happen. So that was awesome. The third was flawless execution, I thought. We just had the right people. It was a small team, a designer, engineer, program manager, myself, and some other leadership, which were just asking how is everything going and if you need any help. So flawless execution in 4.5 weeks, and it was all launched. Of course, there were pieces later that we filled in, like the playbook that had to be developed and whatnot. But as far as the public-facing, everything that was supposed to be ready, that was done. So that's what I meant by success. And the 3 things that I learned helped make it successful. The next is a creativity app. So this was actually my first project as a product manager. And when I first joined the team, let me first talk about the creativity app. So this was really rethinking how you can do infographics. What we were going to compete against was Excel users who have tons of numbers, who are really used to Excel, who know how to do infographics as far as Excel can offer. But the value that our team was bringing to this project was the design. The person who had really thought about this idea was the designer, one of the superb designers in the company and probably the industry. When he did pitches, they were different, they were awesome. So when he designed the infographics, they were like absolute super like top-notch. But when I first started on the project, what I learned, user interviews that were being done were by this person who had devoted I don't know how many years to the infographics, like studying infographics, and wanted to launch this. The user interviews were biased. Of course, the questions were, do you like this sort of questions instead of, well, what do you feel, you know? And so when I noticed that, I started writing a user test plan that would be non-biased, and I made sure I got the research team to review it. And when I presented this to the team, of course, this person comes along and rewrites the whole user plan, the user interview test plan. And it's because, of course, he's got vested interest. This was a difficult sort of interpersonal relationship that I am, as a new person on the team, I'm trying to build this relationship. And instead of seeing my effort as being helpful, it's being, redone. So a difficult one, I don't think. I have come across difficult relationships in multiple, projects, but this was not something I could easily kind of, get my handle on. Not something where I could, establish that rapport, because just to begin with, they didn't want me. This person didn't want a product manager on the team because he wanted to have all the control. So that's one thing. And then the second thing I learned about this project, just by talking to all different people, is when we are going to executives and making the pitch, we consistently hear, oh, awesome, this is a great idea, we should definitely do it, let me know how I can help. And they walk away. Well, where is the money? Where is more resources? None of them is committing to the resources. And I just go and talk to different people, what's going on? What are we doing wrong here? And what I heard is, well, where's the business model here? Are you wanting to launch a full-fledged app, a product? That's what we wanted to do. That's what we started with. But there are other options. Could we launch this as part of our existing products? It could be a good fit with Illustrator. It could be a good fit with XD. And so I started going down those paths, talking to those teams, whether it was technically feasible, whether it made sense, whether they had seen such a demand on their side. The data models that we were using in this, would they fit? I think finally what I found out is it's the technical feasibility that's just not there. This requires very different kind of implementation versus what we had in our existing products. And second was, I needed to make sure people understand that there's sufficient enough market size for us to launch it as a single product. You can't, in large organizations, I guess, you can't take something and be passionate about it and say, I'm just going to launch it. I know there are a certain number of users who are going to just absolutely love based on the interviews I have done. You have to prove the size. The question that always gets asked is this big enough for Adobe to invest in? That was a big question. And finally, when we did the market sizing exercise with our business partners, what we came down to is not big enough. Not big enough for the size that we would invest in. So it has been put on hold because there's a certain amount of excitement, but we just don't want to launch it as a single, product, because there's tons that goes in maintaining it and after, launch as well. So anyways, that's a hold. I don't like to work on hold projects, let alone kill. I haven't worked on anything that I had to kill, but that would be a fun one to work. I'd have to see how I accept it, how do I kill a product. The third one is an artificial intelligence app. So here I started working on this about 2 years ago, and technology exists. So we knew we have great research teams. There are many teams working on AI stuff, anything that they can do. But the question was, well, what about the product market fit? Is there a product? Is there a demand? Is there any pain points that we are solving for? So that's technology that exists. What I started with to understand if there is product market fit is I began working on business model canvas, because that's a tool I knew from different courses and classes that I had taken. I started to hypothesize what all different elements would look like on a business model. What kind of business would this be? Then I just wasn't still sure, am I using the right tools to figure out the product market fit? Of course, there is tons of other things that you can use to understand the product market fit. And that's the point when I reached out to a mentor, somebody who ended up being my mentor and still a mentor. He has done a lot of new experiments, lean startup methodologies, has taught others. So that was a big step for me. Of course, I knew the importance of mentors in my entire career. I have used a lot of help to grow. But this was huge. I mean, I knew the books. I had read about all of this, but having a mentor and guiding me in the right direction, as in what's the next step? Was business model canvas the right step to work on? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was, but he pointed me to lean canvas instead, because that's where you actually start thinking about the product at the product level. And that's when I started differentiating between product and business. In our company, of course, there is separate business teams, which I didn't know. Every different, whether it's video, whether it's Acrobat, whether it's AR, 3D, or digital imaging where I am in Photoshop org, we all have separate business teams, which I weren't aware of. And those business teams have the responsibility to think about what pricing would look like, how would we launch, what the go-to-market strategy would be. And the job of the product is to think about just the product. And that's where Lean Canvas really helped. And what really, the questions I tried to start answering with Lean Canvas is there a problem? Multiple problems. Who are we targeting? Who are our users? What's the unique value proposition that we can bring to the table? And what's, of course, the competitive landscape looking like, all of that. So that was, I think, brought a lot more clarity to the questions, the big questions I had, but still initial step, I think. The next step I moved on to was to launch some landing pages. In these landing pages, I added the value propositions that we thought we could offer and ran some Google ad campaigns initially, Facebook ad campaigns, Instagram, whatnot. It was interesting to see the conversion rates. I mean, I saw anywhere between 40 to 80% conversion rates, which were mind-boggling. I mean, initially I was expecting 5 to 6%, and I'm going to go say, hey, there is something here we should move forward with. And in the beginning, I saw 40%. And then as I tried to improve those value propositions, how we were communicating, who we were targeting, it went up to 80%. So, of course, a real good confirmation that we are heading in the right direction. This is something people really want. So very much quant data that we were looking for. Besides that, user interviews. So of course, we have a user research team that does the user interviews. But I think what I have learned is how you do user interviews is super, super critical. So what I learned is the continuous, one thing that Teresa Torres talks about is continuous interviewing. Have one interview, at least one interview every week. That's one tip. The second is how you interview. She suggests story-based interviewing techniques instead of a question answer. So my original way of doing interviews were, these are the questions I need to get the answers for. So I'm going to go and talk about, pose these questions one after another, and that's going to be my user interview. But I think the way she suggests is you do story-based. So you really start asking, tell me about the last time you edited your photo or created a video. And that leads to follow-up questions, still going deeper into the story. And the way what you unveil with that kind of a technique is completely different. And maybe not what you were expecting to get out of it. Maybe you couldn't even answer any questions that you had. But that leads to all sorts of new information that you wouldn't have expected to get. So amazing, amazing technique, I think. So I think what I would say is, as product managers, we face ambiguity, is what I learned. That's become a part of my life, which was very different than what I knew as a software engineer. I mean, as a software engineer, I'm so organized. I have a structure. I know what I'm heading towards. Yes, of course, I'm going to run into challenges, but I know I can figure my way out. Here, I don't know what that next blocker is going to be or the question is going to be. And so I have loved ambiguity, and that's why I probably am still in product management. But that's my one key takeaway, to embrace it. Second is be creative. So in the blockers that I mentioned so far, sometimes I was able to use the frameworks and tools and lean startup methodologies that I know of, but some other times not so much. It's just it's an art. So you have to really think about different approaches, maybe go seek out those approaches from during conversations, from being on different projects, or based on your experience. I just still don't know if, now that I've spent 4 years in product management, if I have 10 years down the road, would I feel more confident? Or would I still be in that landscape where, well, there's still more to learn. There's still more that I don't know. And that's exciting to me. So, and the last thing is have fun. That's exactly why we are. It's the hardest job, I think. And whenever I talk to our VPs, I come across the same statement. Product is hard. Why do you want to be here? Like, that's exactly why I want to be here. Because I don't know if I can do it. So that's the exciting part. That's what I had, what I wanted to share, some of the case studies and some of my experiences. But yes, happy to answer questions.
I have a question. So when you did your big, so you're talking about the legal approvals you did at the beginning, and then you mentioned the big landing pages you did. I'm like a little shocked that nobody let you do that. But did you do it with the logos, or how did that actually work?
Those were different projects, by the way. The one we launched. Yes. So, am I supposed to answer that question? Yes. It was fake. Yes. Yes. So there are certain parts in our organization, the teams, that kind of take that leeway and take risks, I guess. So. No. It was we can, of course, and for good reasons. We don't want to unveil sometimes that we are Adobe, right? Because we don't want that bias to come along. Because sometimes when we do user interviews saying we are from Adobe, we get to hear all the good things. We don't want to hear the good things.
All right. So one of the questions was, what was the end result from the creativity app?
It's been put on hold. It's still on hold. I'm not on the project anymore, but recently the status that I heard was still on hold. The team is continuing to do what they were doing, as they are passionate, but the size remains the same. Until I think what will really help is if we can figure out the go-to-market. We're definitely not going to launch it as a single product, but if as part of some other product, if you're able to launch it, that might make it happen.
All right, and the one I want to know this one too. What are the ways that you have fun as a product manager?
I think I define fun I relate it to unknowns. Because every single day when I'm there and working on a project, or even when let's say for example, when I'm looking at how the Google Ads did over the last week or yesterday, and I look at the numbers, what I find is I don't know what to expect, right? That's a simple example, but it's just every single day I don't know what to expect. What am I going to get into? Sometimes I'm pitching to the executives. I don't know what kind of questions I can prepare myself, like these are the questions I can expect and make sure I have the answers ready, but I don't have that all the time. So sometimes I have to say, I have to do more research. And that happens very often because there's multiple VPs sometimes and they are all coming from different angles. So it's the unexpected nature of the job. I think for me, that's fun.
All right, and the last question we've got is, in a large corporation, how do you manage that role clarity, product management, program, marketing, et cetera?
Absolutely. So many times these are defined. So program managers have their own group. They know what their job descriptions are like. They've learned it over time. Same thing for marketing because they exist in a separate marketing organization. They all the way go into the CMO. We in product are spread across different organizations. So video has their own product, imaging has their own product, and so forth. Sometimes their duties overlap. A lot of times I do program management whenever I'm working on projects that are small, and we don't have a program manager. It's not big enough for us to have a full-fledged program manager, and I end up doing program management. But program management is such a function that I think is expected. I think the company expects everyone to take on some form of program management because you can't just have the luxury to have a program manager, to have that structured and organized approach, unless the project is big enough, of course.
Awesome. Shalini.
Thank you.